Truth is, the governor held hostage the budget making to help his wealthy friends in large corporations. And at the end of the day, the people that were held hostage were Illinoisans who are dependent upon state funding for things such as autism, breast cancer screening, child abuse prevention, and sexual assault.
Would you expect that those issues are going to be discussed, the non-budget issues such as term limits, those kinds of issues, they're going to be discussed now in the working groups?
Well, I just laid out all of these areas where we propose that we be full participants in this process. There was some resistance from the governor today. It's kind of interesting because the last time I checked, Illinois government was a democracy, a full participant democracy, and he seems to be suggesting something different.
Mr. Speaker, what happens January 1st if there's no budget?
Well, that's an interesting question. And so if you could just bear with me for a little bit, right? There's a lot of conversation about the stopgap budget. That was a request of the governor. So at the end of June, the governor requested a stopgap budget. That particular budget is characterized as a stopgap budget, but it's really, in some respects, a budget for 12 months. So there was a 12-month appropriation for elementary and secondary education. There was a 12-month appropriation for capital. After that, there was a 6-month appropriation for some operations and agencies, a 6-month appropriation for higher education, which would include the MAP program, and a 6-month appropriation for some grants to human service agencies. So to answer your question, on January 1, spending authority for certain of those areas will expire. That doesn't mean that costs that have been incurred before January 1 will not be paid. So if there's costs incurred before January 1 and all the paperwork is properly filed, why payments can be made for those costs.
So are you saying
Thanks for
that this
bearing
could
with
go
me.
on indefinitely, that we can just keep going on?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just explaining to you what happened in what is characterized as the stopgap appropriation. Okay?
Well, will there be hardship as a result of not having a budget after
No.
January 1? And does that anticipated hardship cause a sense of urgency on your part?
There's been hardship for people in Illinois who are dependent upon state funding for autism services, breast cancer screening services, child abuse services, sexual assault services. That's where there has been hardship, and that was brought on because the governor held hostage the Illinois budget-making process in order to help his wealthy friends in large corporations.
What do you mean
Speaker
by that? What do you mean by
Speaker
that when you
Madigan.
say help his
I
wealthy
mean by
friends?
that exactly what I said.
But in what
That's-
way?
that's
In what
what
way
he's-
does he help his
That's
wealthy
what
friends?
that's what he's all about, to help his wealthy friends in large corporations.
Speaker Madigan,
I don't
Speaker
understand
Madigan.
that. Can you explain that?
I think I just did.
Speaker, I'm just
Can
wondering,
you
how do
explain
you,
Okay, then can you explain what you guys have been up to for the past few months?
Any other questions, Charles?
yeah,
Can you
Speaker, I'm
speak,
confused about what the format of these meetings are. If you can't even agree over whether
sir.
to have working groups.
Uh,
Mr. Durkin, again, used the word stall tactic to describe these working groups. He and Mr. Jonio said there's no reason to go back and recreate groups that did their purpose.
Well, that's where Mr. Harris pointed out that in Illinois, we're a full participant democracy. And we think that people duly elected to the legislature ought to be able to participate in decision-making. If Mr. Durkin and Senator Radonio think differently, so be it.
Speaker, do most people, when they do a budget, try to figure out what they have available, their revenue, then they adjust their spending? Have you, as the Speaker, figured out what your anticipated revenue is for fiscal year 2017? So then you can go about
Yeah.
working with the leaders and the governor to try to figure out what your spending should be.
Generally, there's two sources for that information. One would be the Bureau of the Budget, which is controlled by the governor, and the other would be the Fiscal and Economic Commission, which is a legislative agency, and that's where we go.
But what's your understanding of those
And
numbers?
the Fiscal and Economic Commission works with economic finance forecasting agencies all over the nation.
Well, what do you think's
Speaker
available in
Madigan.
revenue for the next year?
I would want to go to those agencies and ask what numbers they're coming up with. They're probably midterm in the data that they're generating.
Speaker, what
Speaker
if-
Madigan, can you describe the tone of that meeting and if this campaign that
I
those
thought it was
Republicans are-
a very respectful tone, very civil. Nobody Nobody got angry with anybody else.
Is this campaign that the Republicans are running targeting your leadership, is that impacting what's going on in there?
Well, I really don't know if it is. It's not affecting me. I'm the Speaker of the House. I'm a candidate for reelection. It is unusual that one party would come across and get themselves involved in a leadership election. That's
What do
very
you,
unusual.
What do you think the chances might be that it'll take the 2018 election to settle this standoff?
That should not happen. That should not happen. It should not have happened so far. Again, Governor Rauner chose to hold hostage the Illinois budget making to help his wealthy friends and large corporations. The people that got held hostage were the people in Illinois who are dependent upon state funding for services like autism, child abuse protection, sexual assault, breast cancer screenings. That's the tragedy of what's happened.
But you see what I'm driving at here? It's Groundhog Day again. It just keeps happening. Is it going to take another election to settle this?
As far as I'm concerned, this should have been settled a long time ago, and it could have been settled a long time ago if everybody was reasonable about these issues. I'm not the one that decided to hold hostage the Illinois governmental budget making. It's a very unusual tactic for anybody, including a governor, to hold hostage the governmental budget making process in order to help his wealthy friends and large corporations. It's very unusual.
But this